Hello, and welcome to another extraordinary edition of Cracking the Rich Code, the podcast. And I know I say this all the time. We've got a special guest today. You're going to love this guy. Um, Bertie LaRue he calls himself the belief architect and helps people to rebuild their inner architecture of belief, identity, and purpose so they can rise with clarity, confidence, and emotional alignment. Now, it sounds like really great stuff, and I know it is. And he's written a chapter in Cracking the Rich Code called Belief to Achieve, an entrepreneur's journey from invisible to invincible. And that is incredible. One of the things we're going to talk about today is the fact that he just wrote 4 books in like a month. So it's just absolutely incredible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that whole thing. And let me just bring him on because you're going to love this guy. And by the way, you're going to love his accent too. He's from South Africa, and you can listen to this all day. Bertie, how are you today, sir?
I am very well. Thank you, John. I'm so glad to be here talking to you and the listeners out there. It's always a pleasure and it's always an honor.
I love the opportunity to get to talk to the authors and the people who are behind the stories that are in these books. I was honored when Jim Britt asked me to start hosting this show, and so I get a chance to do deep dives with people like you. Now, I just want to start things off right off the bat here. You call yourself the belief architect. Where did that come from?
It's always a challenge to answer the question, number one, what you do, and then why you do it. And I struggled with that for many years. You jump from this to that, what makes sense and what resonates best to you. And eventually I thought that I came up with the idea that everything to me is all about belief. Because if you believe in yourself, you can do anything. You were mentioning about books. Back in 2020, I did my first international talk from stage in Mumbai, and my subject was vision with imagination. And I started writing a book with that subject of vision with imagination. But once again, I found that people don't understand where I'm from. What is my point of departure? Why with imagination? And that stuck with me, and I kept on struggling. So the whole thing about the architect, it's an architect creates something from nothing, and if it's not from nothing, it creates something from people's dreams. You wish you had a house that's this, that, and the other, and you share it with the architect, and it's the architect's job to imagine that house in completion and then trying to draw it. So if you can believe it, I'll draw it for you, the way to get there.
I love it. I love it. That makes so much sense. And the fact that you're able to help people to kind of create the blueprint and the design for where they want to go, and then provide them the structure for building it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think all of us know exactly what we want, but expressing it, getting it in a state that other people can understand it and can see it as you see it is probably one of the biggest challenges, because we are all different. Our approaches are different.
Right.
Our point of departure and our angle of entry is different.
I like that. So what kind of folks do you work with to help them?
It is at this stage, and I sort of funneled down to where I want to work. So I work with those people, and that's where the invisible to invincible come. It's the people, the leaders that, as I say, the world sees their success, but they don't longer feel it. I help them to believe again, and that's where it comes from. Because we've all either ourselves at that feeling, or we've been with leaders, and I can take it through to sport. The professional people run on a field, not believing they can win. They've lost before the whistle blew to start
Right.
the game. It's all about the belief. If you believe you can, you can. We know the
You know,
story.
that
If
that
you
makes
don't, you're right. Yeah.
that makes so much sense, because if you don't think you can, then you won't even try as hard.
No, you won't. You've given up. You've given up. There's people that's given up, and I mean, we can expand the discussion so long, and that's why I often speak to ladies from a leadership point of view, and then I understand. I've been there. We've all been there. We had aspirations to get to certain positions in organizations, and even us as males that thought that we had an advantage. Ahead of other of women, which is unfair, and it's always been unfair. And I say to ladies, stop competing, become the competition. And I
Ooh,
say that to people as well. Stop competing, because if you compete, by implication, you're saying others are better than you. That's why you have to compete with them. Stop doing that. If you believe you're better than them, just become the competition. Prove that you're better than them. It's easy as that. Is it easy to do it? No, it's not. But if you can believe it, you can
right.
get
Put
there.
that in your brain and get yourself on that track. That is absolutely brilliant. What an interesting way to change your mindset. And I've never realized that before, and I'm gonna take that to heart myself. Right? Stop competing, because we're not competing. If you say you're competing, then you're admitting that somebody else is better. I just fight
Absolutely.
the fact to realize that I'm not less than others. Right? That's the thing. So many of us find ourselves is that we're comparing ourselves to other people, and we find ourselves lacking in something, whatever it is that we admire or want that somebody else has that we don't. Whether it's a certain amount of finances or a certain lifestyle or whatever. And so that whole keeping up with the Joneses, and the grass is greener on the other side, and all those things that we've had in our life for so many years that tells us to compare ourselves with other people. I think the only person we need to compare ourselves to is who we were yesterday.
I think we've all grown up with that comparison. But what it actually was meant is to look at other people and to see that you can do better. If they run the 100 meters at 10.2, you don't desire to be better, to run faster than them, but you are seeing what is possible, and if I work hard, I can improve that. And that's what we compare. But the problem is that we start looking at people's perfections as per our perceptions, and then we would want to have those perfections part of us, and that clashes with our own concept of our own identity, because we are
Right.
uniquely different. So it's good to look at other people and see their perfections. And often I say to people, when I deal with them, because one of the issues that we deal with leaders that has started feeling that they're not achieving anymore, I ask them to get back to their identity, to their person, to who they are, what is their values, to go back to that state. Because they got to a point where they were looking at people with almost a desire to be like them, because they see that as perfection, and they believe that that will be the best way to lead. That's what I must do. And they forget they're unique. Just be authentic, you. Stop
Perfect.
doing that. So start spending time in the mirror, because the moment I look in the mirror, I can see the perfections in me. And all of a sudden, I understand that I am actually has so much for going for myself, but because I don't spend time looking at myself, but just at others, I end up with this desire to be perfect like others, instead of seeing that I am actually created by God perfectly already,
And
gifted.
how often, Bertie, do we wind up looking in the mirror, instead of seeing the things that are good and perfect about us, we we become self-critical, and we look in the mirror and we see the imperfections.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a human problem that we have, is that we don't, when we talk about love, we also, when we are coaches and so forth, we we help people to understand that they got to unconditionally love themselves, because only then do you understand what true love is, and you can love others, because you can accept the good, the bad, the ugly from others, because you have done that to yourself. You've loved what you are good at, and you understand that. You understand your why. But we don't spend time in the mirror because we brought up, I don't know about you guys, we in South Africa, the old way was saying, if you spend time in front of the mirror, you're vain. So you don't, you hardly comb your hair in the mirror. And if you have got my hair, you don't even have to look in the mirror to comb your hair anymore. So you don't spend time in front of the mirror. Fortunately, I have to shave. But the fact of the matter is, we need to spend more time with ourselves, so that we can get back to where we understand who we are and why we are. So that's maybe we spend too much time with what we are, and that is the problem. That's the mask we carry and reflect to people
Ooh, yeah, so
of what
true,
we
right?
are.
Yeah, we get so
Yeah,
wrapped up in titles and images and that kind of thing. We forget who we are at the core.
absolutely,
So, hey,
absolutely.
folks, if you're just tuning in to this, we are having a fantastic conversation with Bertie Roux. Bertie is a belief architect, helping people to see themselves for who they really are, and finding that helping to rebuild that inner architecture of their belief and identity and purpose. Bertie, this has been great so far, and I think we can talk all day, because you're speaking my language with helping people to understand who they are at the core, and this is really incredible. I have to ask you now, because you are spouting such incredible wisdom here. How did you come to these insights yourself?
You know,
Tough question, I know.
a curious mind, I believe, is that shares something. But I've spent a lot of time in myself asking that question. Um, I didn't have it easy. I never had I don't consider my life to have been too difficult. I mean, I've always had food in my tummy and clothes on my back. But yeah, we do sometimes fight through life. Now, I was gifted by some gifts that I don't recognize for a long, long time. I struggled through school, not because I was stupid, not because I didn't have the IQ. I just didn't have the passion. I didn't enjoy school. Because I mean, if people want me, I couldn't recite 2 3 sentences one after the other, because it's not never interested to me. Life is the interesting, seeing people. I would spend time on a radio, at a station, just sitting on a bench and looking at people, and imagine where they're from, what they like, what are they doing, where they're going. You just, because and that passion went through with everything. So the wisdom that we can call it wisdom is the curiosity to learn more about people, to read more about what people can be. And I mean, I went to university and qualified as not as an accountant, a BCom. I was a teacher and I'm an accountant, but not and I was an analytical accountant, a management accounting, rather than a clinical accountant like a chartered accountant, because I want to see what the figures tell me. And that's where the curiosity started. And that's where the wisdom comes from, because now you gain more information because you ask the question, why? And you ask it again, why? And you ask again, why? And you
Yeah.
frustrate the hell out of your mother, out of your teacher, everybody else, because you ask why? Because you want to understand it, because you want to understand how it's put together, so that you can not necessarily rebuild it, but can help people that has lost track. And where it started, I don't know. I mean, I got to an age about 55 where I realized I was living my life to get my father's favor, which I felt I never got, not his approval to what I am and what I've become. And then I stopped. I said, "Hey, I've got to live my life according to my rules and because of my reasons. Stop doing for other people. It's me." And I mean, then those things started to come through, and you say, "I accept that I'm different. I'm accept that I frustrate some people and some people love me. That's the uniqueness of life. That's why we've got friends. They fill you up. Where I lack, they fill it up.
I love that, especially when you were talking about kind of living for your father's approval. I think we all find ourselves doing that at times, right? We're living for to seek somebody else's approval, whether it's our parents, a spouse, or maybe a potential mate. We're always trying to see what is going to attract people to me, what is going to attract clients and customers to me, right? I want to seek their approval. Sometimes we need to go and reset, and it's really really important to be able to do that, and you bring that out in your chapter. Now I unfortunately do not. I looked at my shelf and I do not have a volume 16, so I'm going to have to get it because I want to read your chapter. I really like Believe to Achieve, an entrepreneur's journey from invisible to invincible, because I think that says a lot right there. If someone were to, if you would say what you want somebody to come away from your chapter with, what is the one main learning point that you want people to feel from what you wrote?
If you allow me, John, I will tell you the story about where this concept of invisible to invincible come from, because maybe
Perfect.
that would tell the story. I was fortunate to be on a streamed radio station here in South Africa. A friend of mine ran the program from Johannesburg, and I had a slot 10 o'clock every Tuesday for a couple of years. And I was one day down here where I'm sitting now at the southernmost tip of Africa in a little town called Agulhas, where the Indian and Atlantic Ocean come together. And I was sitting on a dune doing my talk that day. And I was sitting with the sand running through my fingers, waiting for the time to go over to get to 10 o'clock. And I was thinking, you know, these pieces, these sand has got, it's immaterial, this handful that I've got. But if I look at the beach, if this handful doesn't exist, then this dune won't exist and this beach won't exist. Therefore, every one of that the grains counts. Then I look over the ocean, and I was thinking about a boat on the ocean, and I thinking about this big expanse, and I realized that much of my life, I felt I was living like that, invisible, like that little boat. If we have to go find me on this ocean, I won't find me. Little boat on this big ocean, you're invisible. Nobody, it doesn't exist. Nobody cares actually. They only the currents take me left to right and everywhere. And then over my shoulder, I could hardly see it, but I knew what it was. It was the lighthouse here in Cape Agulhas that's guiding the ships around this treacherous piece of ocean. And here's wrecks that you can actually see from the beach, from the rocky side. And I thought that is the definition of invincibility. That's what we need to achieve to become invincible in our own belief that we can in this area where our expertise lie. Because this lighthouse, it doesn't go to the ships. It goes nowhere. It stands there. It's solid. Its light shines and it guides the ships safely around the southernmost point of tip of Africa. That's the role. So the concept of moving from invisible to invincible is what it's all about. And I help the entrepreneur to understand that concept of if you can believe you're invincible in your beliefs, nothing will move you. You are the lighthouse. You are giving light that saves people's lives. So me as an entrepreneur, me as a coach, me as a speaker, motivator, mentor, that's what I'm here on life. I've put here as an anchor and it's a guiding light for others. And that's where the invisible to invincible come from. So if I take the people from that feeling to a belief of invincibility, I've done it. But so often as a coach, when we meet up with people, they've got a concept, an idea what their problem are. And they come to you for a reason what they want to achieve. But they've got no idea down at the core where the problem started. What is truly, honestly, and sincerely lacking in their lives, which they most of the time they have all the answers. Me as a coach just need to bring it to the fore, to the surface, so that they can see it and start believing it. Job done.
We get lost sometimes in kind of what our purpose is and who we are, because we get lost in the day to day, and we find ourselves kind of going off on a track that seems to take us in a certain direction, and we kind of lose ourselves there. And so, going back to your lighthouse analogy,
Big, yeah.
being that light to help guide people back to the track, back to the proper safe path, all of that is so critical. I've always liked the light analogy in everything. That's what I do too. Mom, share your fire. It's about a torchlight. Same thing, right? And we all realize that, and we all have that light. We just have to remember that we have that light within us. And then the other part of that is going back to what you said about competition earlier too. We're not competing about whose light is brighter, because your light, my light, all of our lights, as we combine, it illuminates for everyone. And so the more light we allow, the more light that we have, the better it is for all of those around us. Instead of saying, oh, well, you got to douse your light because mine's better than yours. No, it's not that. It's all combined. So I love this conversation, Bertie. We're gonna we're gonna
Absolutely.
go into overtime here, I think.
The
But
same here, that what you are alluding to, as well as people need to understand what is enough. When I can believe that I am enough. Otherwise, we never start, because we don't know where we will ever end or finish. When am I good enough to understand that I am enough?
that's beautiful. I want to change this conversation direction just a little bit, because you revealed something to me just before we came on, and you said that you managed to write 4 books. I think it was 4 books. It was several books in a very, very short period of time. So, the writing process is something that we haven't talked about much on this podcast. With other writers and stuff, we talk about their ideas and their concepts and what they're trying to get across. But I would like to get an understanding for your writing process and how this evolved to all of a sudden this spate of multiple books in a very short period of time.
John, I was shocked myself. I think the first, I was approached a while back by a lady saying I must write a chapter in a child's book. So I wrote a book about unrealistic expectations of parents in terms of expectations from their children. And I finally wrote my chapter, submitted it, and I realized it wasn't that tough. And then I was introduced to Jim and cracking the rich code, which was a bit more of a challenge, because at the end of the day, you have one chapter, a certain number of words, and that you have to write to get a concept in there, and you just had to write to make sense. So make a statement, qualify it, and end up with a submission and a support. You have to write that in there, and that
and pretty
wasn't so
condensed.
difficult either. Because the fact is, we don't know how much we do know. We know the old story of you don't know what you do know, what you don't know, what you don't know, and so forth. But there's so much. I so often nowadays speak to people and saying, "You've got a book in you, probably a couple of books in you. Your life has been so full of exciting experiences people would love to read about, but we are so scared." But we just need to start and get your ideas, and then it's just start, and that's the chaos. So I started writing a book entitled "Vision with Imagination," and then because I was teaching it, I was consulting people on the principle of creating a vision with imagination, so clear that you can start live it in the here and now. But I found that people was difficult to touch it.
Right.
So I changed, and I was starting to talk about belief to achieve, a leader's journey from invisible to invincible. And when I started writing it, I realized I'm just trying to write another book teaching people how to lead. But I know that people are different. I'm a whole brain practitioner, left brain and right brain concepts, and I understand. I know how people differ and why they differ. It's not wrong. It's just uniquely them. So I then said, oh, Amber Gasley, stop this bus right here. I'm going to write another book to teach people how to teach others. Because at the end of the day, this unique individual need to teach. Yes, there's books that tell you that's what you need to do. But I always say that's what you need to do when you're a manager. There's steps and controls and what you need to have in place as a manager. A leader is a different animal.
Right.
It's a different animal. And I start writing a book to help leaders find out who they are, and therefore from that perspective and that knowledge, how they uniquely will lead other people. Become that authentic self, believing in their own abilities. Whether they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Because people that follows people when they are authentic, when they are the same. And I used the term the other day. I spent a lot of time talking about masks, because having a couple of hats means I fulfill a couple of functions, unique, separate functions. But if I have masks, it means I'm almost creating different personas in my life, at home, at the office, at church, at the sport club, and even with my senior staff, my team in the boardroom. It is difficult to keep that up. It's difficult enough to change the hats, but you're doing that. And when I started writing that book,
being a whole different person.
Yeah, every time. But now you've got to remember who was on the other side of your mask, because that person get to know this mask. Maybe I forget and I put this mask on, and he said, I don't like that guy. I don't trust that guy. You got to. It becomes so difficult, and that's why burnout happens, and leaders commit suicide, broken marriages, and all those kind of things, because we just lose control. That's why I'm saying, when the world sees your success, but you don't longer feel it, because you have to work so hard back at the ranch that there's no excitement anymore. And when I was writing this book, and I started to try to focus, all these other things come in mind, distracting my attention and saying, you got to cover this point. You got to cover this point and this point. Then to a certain stage, I just put my original book down, Belief to Achieve, A Leader's Journey from Invisible to Invincible. I said, okay, I will do this book for leaders. Different angle, different way, a different approach. I say, but ladies are struggling, women are struggling in business because of discrimination that they not only feel, that there's extended attention. I'm going to write a book to help them to understand that. And back at the one solid line there is, stop competing, become the competition. And then I realized that we got the LGBTQ plus people that has a place in this world, and they are also struggling to find a way for themselves. How are they fighting to get in? And I'm saying to them, stop competing, become the competition. If you don't belong, don't try to force you in there. You won't fit a square peg in a round hole, except if you have a hammer. Get out there. Go where the square peg has got a square hole. So that's why I ended up with 3 books called The Lighthouse Within. 3 different books for 3 different people in the marketplace. So at the end of the day, it wasn't so difficult, because I just took that mindset and I just put it there, and I put them on that side, and I got down to this one book, and these others got their own form and they got their own life as I was writing that. So at the end of the day, when I said, okay, I'm finished with this one now, the others were almost done.
That is amazing. But you're right, and it makes so much sense when you think of it this way, because I know when I'm in the writing process too, especially when we're writing to within a certain format or whatever, it's like all these great ideas that you want to cover, but it doesn't really fit right here, and it doesn't, and there's no room for that, and so you have these other ideas and they wind up getting put aside. But now taking those other ideas or those those slight variants on the original idea and then creating something new out of it. That's just brilliant. I can't believe you knocked out 3 books that quickly, but and that's something I really admire about you. Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Lighthouse Within in its various forms when it comes out. We'll be looking forward to that going forward in the future. And I can't believe, Bertie, we're out of time already. You see how quickly this goes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, I'm glad you had fun because I know that I did. I want to tell folks out there, look, we've had this fantastic conversation with Bertie LaRue. Bertie wrote in volume 16 of Cracking the Rich Code, a chapter called Believe to Achieve, an entrepreneur's journey from invisible to invincible. And he is, let's point out to where you can find out more information. You can go to bertielarue.com. EROUX.com. So definitely want to find him online and learn more about him there. And if you want to connect with Bertie, the best way to do that is on LinkedIn. And it's just under his name, Bertie LaRue. So, Bertie, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you would like to have people know about you? We're already at time, but I want to give you another moment to just, if there's one last thing that you want people to remember you for.
No, that it just is a pleasure to be where I'm at. There's a lot of people that always ask you, now what's like to be retired. And I said, what are you talking about?
What's retired?
That's one decision I never made. I've structured my life that I can live a life without having a boss demanding and setting times for me. So I didn't retire. I just rewire. I'm constantly rewiring as we go along. And I would say to everybody out there, stop thinking about all of those things that's troubling you. Just rewire, change your mindset, and do what you love doing. And if you don't know what you love doing, spend some time finding out what you love doing, because you were born to stand out doing what you love doing. That is why you get up in the morning.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the opportunity, John.
Well, thanks for joining us today. This has been a fantastic conversation. Folks, learn more about Bertie LaRue on bertielarue.com. Check out his chapter in volume 16 of Cracking the Rich Code. And don't forget to check out all of our future episodes on this podcast. I love doing this because I have these fantastic conversations and I learn so much each and every time I get a chance to deep dive with the authors here. Bertie, thank you again. Have a wonderful day. And folks, we'll see you on the next episode.
Absolute pleasure.